Residents evacuated after buildings were reduced to rubble and sewage systems burst. A skydiving adventure turns to tragedy with no survivors from a New Zealand plane crash. It's 9 o'clock in Hobart and 8:30 in Darwin. Hello and welcome to Newsnight this Saturday the 4th of September. I'm Chris Rowe. Also ahead this hour, a flood emergency in Victoria with the Army called in to help rescue communities cut off. In sport, Fremantle flying high in the AFL after knocking Hawthorn out of the finals. And the forecast, strong winds and showers easing over the southeast, scattered rain for southeast Queensland.
This is Newsnight.
Aftershocks from the massive earthquake in the New Zealand city of Christchurch are expected to continue for days. The huge clean-up has begun and the damage bill is tipped to reach more than $2 billion. The South Island has been rocked by one of the biggest quakes in 80 years at around 4:30 this morning. A state of emergency has been declared following the earthquake, which measured a magnitude of 7.1 and was centred 30 kilometres to the west of the city. There have been no reported deaths and only 2 serious injuries, while many buildings and roads have been damaged. Residents have been evacuated from some areas because of disrupted water and power.
This is the moment the quake struck.
This is it, the big earthquake.
Outside, the extent of the devastation quickly became apparent. Buildings had collapsed onto streets, spilling bricks everywhere. Cars were left crushed underneath, these ones abandoned, their hazard lights still flashing. Children forced out of their homes, huddled under blankets. Locals were left stunned.
The whole building felt as if it was actually going to fall over sideways, and it was shaking back and forth as if it had been hit by something.
Oh my gosh, well that shake lasted probably over a minute.
And where are you going to head to?
Up the hills, up as far as we can go to get away from in case there's a tsunami.
Elsewhere, revellers who were still out in the city's pubs when the tremors struck gave their accounts.
Serious rocking, serious going backwards and forth. There seemed to be a bit of a laugh to start with. No one spilled their drinks.
Sunrise and the damage was incredible. From the air, these heart-wrenching shots of a beautiful city in ruins. Yet more crushed cars, the streets empty of people. Shop fronts collapsed into the streets. This chimney teetering precariously on a rooftop, huge cracks buckled the roads and pavements. Residents could only look on in disbelief. Businesses are already counting the cost. Bottles at this shop lay smashed and strewn across the aisles. Motorists queuing for petrol, panic buying.
If we just get you guys to move back, there's still glass breaking up here. We don't see anyone here.
Emergency services quickly cordoned off the city's damaged areas as dogs were sent searching through the rubble for anyone who may be trapped. And just as Prime Minister John Key was touring the city, this fire broke out in a building in the CBD. Medical staff worked hard tending to the injured. This man was particularly shaken.
The sad thing, I just couldn't remember my daughter's name or anything. And I didn't know where I was.
Frightening.
Frightening, yeah. Most frightening thing I've ever been through in my life.
In this town, just outside the city, the roads were flooded with mud. Close by, this footbridge had collapsed. The Mayor of Christchurch took a walk through the city, reassuring people that they would get all the help they needed.
There's a lot of work to be done here, but mercifully, the real cost, which would have been the loss of human life, it seems that we've been spared that, and we can't give enough thanks for that.
And as the day draws to a close, this is a city lucky. No deaths, but extensive damage.
The damage bill from the Christchurch quake could reach between $1.5 billion and $2 billion. Entire buildings have crumbled while water and sewage pipes across the city have burst.
The biggest city on New Zealand's South Island is crumpled and broken, and it's going to take a long time and a lot of money to fix. Amid the power cuts, buckled roads, the ruptured sewerage and water pipes, people's safety was key.
Please don't panic, be sensible, be safe, and we will work our way through this as we go forward.
The Lord Mayor declared a state of emergency, but was thankful for one thing.
It's a blessing, it's a miracle, no loss of life.
Some were counting their blessings.
If he hadn't jumped up to save the china cabinet for Mum, he'd be dead, I think.
What do you think when you look at your bed hanging there?
If I hadn't rolled, I would probably be dead.
For many residents, though, there was nothing to be thankful for. The damage radiated well out of the city.
We've got a crack in the hallway, about 30 millimetres wide, 70 down. It's like someone's gone through the chainsaw, through concrete.
Businesses too are facing terrible losses.
I was hopeful until I got about 50 metres away.
As teams tried to prioritise what to fix first, there were desperate pleas not to sticky beak, not to flush toilets and not to use mobile phones. Insurance companies were quickly brought in to begin assessing the damage. The early guess is 100,000 claims, a damage bill of up to $1.5 billion. Prime Minister John Key and senior ministers arrived mid-afternoon.
If you have a home in Christchurch and it's been damaged and you've got insurance, the first $100,000 is covered by the Earthquake Commission, the old EQC, and they've got plenty of money. They've got $15 billion, so they've got more than enough to pay out on this.
Despite the loss and heartbreak, those affected are being urged to look after one another.
So we're saying to people, do what Kiwis do, go and talk to your neighbours, go and make sure that the old couple next door or the old gal down the street's okay, help each other.
Tonight, up to 90% of the power is back on. There's accommodation for the homeless and safe water supplies are being organised. But there are weeks, months, years of work ahead before life can ever be considered normal in Christchurch again.
Well, they don't call them the Shaky Isles for nothing. New Zealanders are well used to earthquakes, and they should be. Scientists know that the islands sit on a powder keg of seismic activity that can go off at any time.
Christchurch hasn't been hit by a quake this big in more than 100 years. And from deep beneath the earth, the rumble returned. The city lies above the Great Alpine Fault, the collision point of the Australian Plate and the Pacific Plate, which runs the length of the South Island.
So you've got all those stresses built up as the two plates slide past one another.
The fault line is part of a bigger danger zone, the Pacific Rim of Fire. In the last 4 years, the South Island has been hit by 3 earthquakes of magnitude 7 and above. But the last time this city shook this much was in 1888, when the spire on the Christchurch Cathedral crumbled during a 7.1 quake. It's been a shaky year for planet Earth. January 12, Haiti, 230,000 people died when the magnitude 7 quake hit. February 27 in Chile, and 1,000 people were killed after an 8.8 quake. April 4, Mexico and Southern California hit by a 7.2 jolt. And most recently, August 10, a 7.6 magnitude quake struck Vanuatu. Experts are confident that's no more than usual, but can't say when the next one will hit.
But to actually put your finger on, say when and where, just cannot be done.
An Australian tourist is one of 9 people killed in a plane crash on New Zealand's South Island. The skydiving plane came down shortly after takeoff from an airstrip near Fox Glacier, about 150 kilometres west of Christchurch. There were no survivors.
In a picturesque New Zealand paddock, a nightmare end to a skydiver's dream. A pile of charred wreckage is all that remains of a New Zealand designed and built light plane. It slammed into a paddock and burst into flames while trying to take off.
It took off too early and just did a loop and came down and crashed.
The pilot, an 18-year-old man from Victoria, and 3 tourists from the UK, Ireland and Germany were all on board. So were 4 local skydiving instructors. Consular officials have contacted the Australian man's family.
I just come down the road here and it was just lying in the paddock. It was just a ball of flames, 10, 12 feet in the air.
Fox Glacier is a popular tourist attraction and skydiving location. The last major crash in the area was in 1994. Then 7 people were killed when a helicopter went down. Now the tiny town is again in shock, mourning the loss of locals and tourists that are its major industry.
To news back home now, and the Army is being sent to Victoria tonight to help the state cope